Hello, everyone. Marie here from Tech and Learning. Thank you for attending day 2 of Tech and Learning's Virtual Leadership Summit. A special thank you to our sponsors, Guide K-12, Now Forecast 5 Analytics, MediaSite, Prezi, Nariva, and Bosslight. I'd like to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub using the link sent in your confirmation email. Once you are logged in, you can visit the sponsor booth as well as the Zoom meeting room and learn about their offerings and book a one-to-one meeting. Each visit to a sponsor Zoom room earns you 20 entries to our Passport to Prizes. We will announce winners via email at the end of the conference. In the Conference Hub, you can also see your personal agenda, network with today's attendees, and then access all of the conference resources in the download section. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions for the presenters during the session, please submit them through the Zoom chat features. Please know we capture all questions and our presenters are happy to answer them as time permits. Today's slides and any additional resources are available and may be accessed within the Downloads tab of the Conference Hub. We encourage you to download any resources or links that you may find useful. Be sure to use the conference hashtag #TLTechLive in your social media posts. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Ray Bendisi.
Thank you, Marie. Welcome everyone here this morning. I know everyone's been crazy busy, everything's going on. We appreciate you coming and spending some time with us today. Just want to make sure, like class, make sure everyone's in the right room, right? This is Digital Citizenship, and we're joined today by Nicole Maditz from San Juan USD and Eva, I'm so sorry.
It's Eva.
Eva yes.
Harvell
from Pascagoula, Gaudier?
Pascagoula Gaucher.
Gaucher, oh, okay, yes. There you go. I should have looked this up ahead. I apologize.
Totally okay.
So just two quick notes for everyone. We decided, the idea of doing this format is to encourage conversation, right? We want to keep it very casual rather than just doing a straight on webinar. We love the interaction. So I would say, as we go on, I'll kind of be checking the chat box, which is in the middle of the Zoom thing there. Please feel free to post questions as we go, and I will point them out to Nicole and Eva as we go so we can answer. And again, just looking for conversation and hear some great stories and information. And Nicole's going to lead us off, so why don't you start there?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. And we're going to be talking a bit about digital citizenship today. As some of you might have heard me say a little bit earlier, right before we were starting, the interesting thing is this is still a huge area of growth and need. And so one of the things that at least I noticed, and I don't think that I'm alone in this as we go forward, is that, I've been trying to get some momentum going with, really purposefully and actively embedding digital citizenship throughout the curriculum in my school district. And, offering all kinds of opportunities to kind of help teachers get a deeper understanding of the traits of good digital citizenship and so on. There wasn't a lot of momentum. There's a lot happening. Teachers have a lot on their plates. And then when the shutdown happened, there was a lot of noticing, not just in my district, but when I looked on social media feeds of, wow, it would be awesome if some of the kids had some stronger digital citizenship skills. Because when we went into modes around the country where we were starting to do remote or distance learning and students are starting to interact in these online spaces, we started to see some of those needs as well as some of the opportunities. And so while I'd like to say that I have a whole bunch of successes to share from my district, it is still a work in progress in my district. And through our conversation today, we will hopefully hear some strategies, not only from Eva and myself, but also from all of you that are really working and making a difference in your district. So one of the things that out of the different digital citizenship models that are out there, the one I'm currently working with in my district most is the one from Common Sense Education. I selected that to be kind of the primary source of resources and curriculum for the teachers in my district, partially because they do have a curriculum by grade band and grade, and they had the most comprehensive list of traits of digital citizenship compared to some of the other platforms I might have seen, which are also good and do really speak well to students. And I think they serve as a nice supplemental piece from ISTE and from Google. And one that I have yet to check out is from Teaching Tolerance. They also have a digital citizenship area now as part of their work. So that's one I'll be looking into. So the themes, and I've reordered them just in the way that I'll talk about some of the things we're noticing in our area, are relationships and communication, cyberbullying, digital drama, and hate speech. Let me close up this so it's not blocking, and hate speech. And then media balance and well-being, privacy and security, digital footprint and identity, and news and media literacy. So when I was starting to look at what I was looking for and what I continue to look for and I'm trying to build are those intersections between these themes and traits of digital citizenship, and how we can really purposefully support our learners in each of these areas in distance and hybrid learning models. So some of what we'll be talking about today will be some strategies for how to address various aspects of these themes when the work is happening online and remotely. So I did provide it in your resources. You have the slide deck, and if you haven't hit the resources yet, you'll see a bit.ly at the end of this where you can grab it as well. The definition from Common Sense Education for relationships and communication about positive relationships, avoiding risky online talk, and understanding when and where and how to say things. But if we want to look at that in terms of distance learning, here are some ideas. I won't read them all. But one of the things that, depending on the age of your students, it might actually be worth having discussions with your students about ways and places in which relationships and communication are nurtured or damaged in online programs. What would be the traits of positive relationships in online programs? What would those look like? What would those sound like? What would we see in the comment area of Google Docs and so on? And what are the kinds of things that we don't want to see, so that we get that out in the open and the students are helping to kind of bring forth what some of those things are. So you can use Google Classroom or your full-on learning management system if you have one. My district does not, with the posting and commenting feature. You can do that through discussion boards when they're collaborating on a document. All of those things are areas where your students are going to have opportunities to interact with each other and contribute to these online spaces. So we want to have conversations with our learners about all of these different ways in which they'll be interacting with us and with each other, and possibly even with others. And what are some positive communication traits that we all want to try to use. Teach them to pause and think. We've all seen this one before. Before they post something anywhere, is it kind, is it truthful, and is it necessary? You could actually have the class create and take their own digital citizenship pledge at the start of the year. And you can also discuss and practice and promote civility. I know we don't always see that when we go ourselves online into a lot of spaces. We want to help really practice and promote that with our students, so it just becomes a natural part of how they interact with people, and they won't have to think about doing it because it will be just how they do it all the time. And appropriate code switching, when your more informal language is appropriate and when it's not. Cyberbullying, digital drama, and hate speech are all something we have to be looking out for. And we want to help students to not only notice it, but to also do something about it when they see it. So we want to build those positive and supportive online communities. If our students are going to be spending time in distance learning, we really, really want that community to be a safe place for them. We know that some of our students are already in situations where they are in insecure housing, insecure food, trauma situations at home for a variety of reasons. If we can get them into our digital spaces to begin with, we need that to be a safe place for them. They depended on school for that before. They no less depend upon it now. So it's really important to understand the features of the online platforms that you use. Is there moderation available? Like, are you able to see what the students post before they post it and approve or decline it? Can the students post anonymously? And so there's a lot of really cool tools that you have to be thoughtful about using because you really have to know your learners, or as you're going back to your schools and your districts and talking to teachers and colleagues in your area, really being thoughtful and knowing that there's a solid set of class norms that they buy into and actually use and follow, maybe before you do something like Jamboard, because Jamboard's awesome. It's very easy to set up. It's super easy to use. It's also anonymous and there's no moderation. So anything they post or say is immediately visible to everyone, and so on. And then muting individuals. And I was just at a session somewhere else yesterday, and there was a really interesting point that came up. If you have a student who's not able to make great choices right now in terms of digital citizenships, and maybe they aren't ready for that level of access to be able to, for example, post and comment in the class feed in whatever platform you're using, you can mute an individual student. And at least within Google Classroom, the other students don't know that necessarily unless the first student shares it with them. And that gives you time and space to have those conversations and work collaboratively together to decide on a plan going forward that will allow that student to come back into the class community as soon as possible online. However, do be cautious about using your microphone muting tool in a tool like Zoom to mute a student. We're going to talk about behavior and communication a little bit, but because everyone in the class can see that you did it, it can send the message that you dislike a student. We know that that's more likely if this is done out of a behavior concern. We know from research that that kind of a disciplinary approach to behavior is more likely to disproportionately affect our students of color and students of need and so on. And so it can actually have a negative impact on what you're trying to accomplish in the classroom if you take someone's voice away by doing the kind of live mute of their thing. And obviously we have to do that sometimes if they're doing something inappropriate, but just be really thoughtful about keeping it constantly on mute or always having the same student and so on. It's just an interesting point that I saw at another session yesterday. Teach your students what cyberbullying and hate speech are, how to recognize it, how does that impact people personally, what are the consequences at school or district or beyond, what should they do. Teach learners about that disinhibition effect where you feel like, well, it's different when you're communicating online, you're not in there, you can't see them, they can't see you. It sometimes lends to people doing things they would never do face-to-face with people. De-escalation responses, and promote and model responding with empathy in all of the online platforms, and promote it when you see students doing it. So media balance and well-being is a huge issue right now, because we know students need to be online for academics, and they also want to do things recreationally, to take a break, but we want to make sure they're not just spending 18 hours a day online and then eating a little bit and then sleeping for 3 hours. So I'm going to move on a little bit, but just know that in your slide deck, you have resources to support you with this. These are linked for you. But I pulled out a couple of points for the media balance aspect of digital citizenship, which is going, again, to be very important right now, that we can do to really foster that so that they aren't inundated with just media consumption time. And then there's a whole bunch more strategies in this link for trauma-informed distance learning. So for example, students don't have to share their feelings verbally. They can do, for their own well-being, you can have them do rating charts, scales, or drawings. And it can be shared with the whole group or just with you, for example, those check-ins, structure and routine, and so on. So there's a lot here that can be done to support learners. And if we have time, or if someone wants me to, I can go back into some of those in a little bit. There was just so much support in this area that I wanted to let you know that we have all of this here in terms of what we can do as educators to really help promote both media balance and also well-being, where I'm focusing heavily on social emotional learning and supports. And then this actually came up in one of the sessions yesterday, privacy and security. They're online all the time. They really need a deeper understanding of what that means. Make sure that students are aware and families are aware that screenshots from live sessions, we want to ask them not to share those, because the students' images, students' names, that's personally identifiable information. We shouldn't be taking screenshots that show their image, and then unless we have written permission from the families to do so, sharing those out on social media with minors. Unwanted guests in live sessions, what do we know about that. How can we prevent that in our own platforms, whether we're using Google Meet or Zoom or another platform? And if you found a great new tool, and I do this, we love technology. I think all of us are here because we love technology, but please make sure it protects learners' data and privacy. So I gave you a link to the California Student Data Privacy Database. There's a pull down to select another state to see if your state is a member of the Student Data Privacy Consortium. And I can answer a couple of questions about that if you have any. So I want to leave some time. So just know that there's more information here about the other aspects of digital literacy and digital citizenship and what that means for what we are doing. And then you have the bit.ly if you haven't dived into the resources links yet.
Thanks, Nicole. Just someone asked about the slide deck. It is in the, if you go to the resources in the conference hub, your slide deck is already there. I know yesterday we had some issues with some of them not being able to be loaded up until later on in the afternoon, but
okay.
So
well, they have it in 2 places. So
yeah,
it should be there. And if not, you have a bit.ly to get you there as well.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Eva, ready to jump in?
Yes. Uh-oh. It is not going to let me show my screen. But that is completely okay. Ray, can you show mine? If not, I can talk it. It's completely fine.
Ava, I can share your screen.
Perfect.
So just, can you send me the URL link in the chat box?
Yes, hold on one second.
Okay.
It is in the shared folder. I can talk it. It's totally fine. And if we get it up, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. So my name is Eva Harrell. I am the tech director for Pascagoula Gaucher. And Nicole talked a lot about students, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what she talked about and talk about the parent. Because as we start to, send our students home and get them involved in digital learning and in distance learning, it's not only the student that's going to have to understand and know, when they're sitting in front of a computer doing their schoolwork, what they should and should not be doing. But we need the parents to understand that too. And there is a huge difference between a student sitting at school on a computer exploring the internet versus a student at home on a computer exploring the internet. For a school district, a student at school, when they go to whitehouse.com, they're not going to get anywhere. There's a reason for that. But if they're at home, they're going to get to that. So one of the biggest things that we need to make sure that we're doing as parents, as we're sending students home to embark on distance learning, we need to first and foremost start to explain to parents what that difference looks like. And for that average parent, they may not know. So starting off with, explaining that, yes, we as a district provide internet access for students, but there are things that we have in place and what those things are in place, why they're there, why we have those there, and then kind of give some resources for parents on ways that they can then kind of put those things in place. So that's a biggie. That's kind of number one. Understanding that big difference between exploring at home versus exploring at school. That can be a biggie. So Nicole mentioned Common Sense. That is a really big resource, a really good resource, not only for teachers and students, but also for parents as well. So if you've never explored the website Common Sense Media, you want to go and check that website out. They have a really great resource for parents that talk about everything from what movies, books, video games would be appropriate for students based on their age, what the content may be. They're also going to have resources that deal with digital, being in that digital world. Resources that are going to talk about, what is Snapchat? What is Instagram? Should my child be on it? What should I be looking for? If you have an older student, I have a student who's going to be starting the 10th grade. Actually, I have two students. I have a daughter who will be starting in 10th this year and a son who will be starting in 3rd. And so for her, we need to be looking at things like sexting, some of those anonymous apps. So Common Sense Media has a lot of great resources for parents to start to understand some of those aspects and avenues that they may not be ready for. I know, like I said, I've got a child who's going in 10th. Even though I'm a technology director, I have to make sure that I understand that part too as a parent, not only as a school employee. Another part that is in Common Sense Media that teachers can utilize when they're talking to their students about digital citizenship, there are a lot of resources that are family resources within that curriculum in Common Sense Media that you can share out with those parents. And Common Sense Media is constantly changing. They do have those resources not only in English, but they're in Spanish and other languages as well. So that is definitely one that you want to check out. Another one is Connect Safely. If you just do a Google search for Connect Safely, it's going to be connectsafely.org. They have a whole series of parent guides. So again, that is a really great resource for your parents to go to better understand some of the programs, some of the applications that are out there, and get a better understanding of, my child is at home and they're wanting to put, XYZ app on there. What might that app be? What kind of get a better understanding of what's out there. Connect Safely is definitely one for your parents and for your teachers, not necessarily one that you want your students to go to, but it's going to have a lot of good information for parents. And then again, for your teachers to access. So that's Connect Safely. Another one, I came across this several years ago when I was the tech trainer for our school district. And I told our director at the time, I said, I have found a way that I can order these really great books for free. And he said, okay, great, let's order them. And so I, ordered about 7,000, one for all of our students. And lo and behold, I got boxes of 7,000 books for free. And the books were chatting with kids about being online. It is a really great book that is out there. You can order them and get them for free, shipping and all, or you can download them. If you do a search for consumer.ftc.gov, that's where you're going to find these. And these are really great books. We've ordered these for several years to give to parents at the beginning of school, just to give them a resource that they can use to talk to their kids about being online. Now, of course, several years ago, we weren't in the situation that we're in now. So these would definitely be a really good resource to provide to those parents to kind of give them some talking points about talking to their kids about, being online and being in front of that computer and just doing all those things that they're going to be doing. Because like Nicole said, they're going to be in front of a computer. I know for the state of Mississippi, for a minimum of 240 minutes if they're in that distance environment. That's a lot of time to be sitting in front of a computer doing schoolwork. Well, then if they're like my son who's going into 3rd, they're going to want to then go play games for another 240 minutes. So where's that balance? So that is another, like I said, another really good resource. Consumer.ftc.gov is where you can find that book that you can access. And again, you can get it. And there are other resources, great resources on there, but the book Chatting with Students About Being Online is a really good one. So what can we do as schools, as teachers, as districts, to kind of help give some more resources to parents? The first one is social media outlets. That is a really great resource. I know right now it's a little, some people just do not want to get on social media because we're not using our social media smarts right now, and we're not being good digital citizens in some instances, but this is how we're going to get information out there to our parents. So start sharing little tidbits. If your district is a Google Classroom district, give those parents some resources. How does my child log in? Well, here are the steps, X, Y, Z. If you're Canvas, if you're Seesaw, whatever it may be, start to share those resources out for parents so that they they at least can get logged in and get their kids started. Another one is a great one is teach student created videos. As they're learning those different common sense media lessons, they're going through those lessons, or maybe they're using the Google resource, or they're using the ISTE resource, or whatever it is to learn digital citizenship. Let that end product be a student created video. Even if they're at home, they can go in and they can create those videos and then post those out so the parents can see, these are what the students are saying, this is what they've learned, and let me learn from those kids. They may want to learn, and they may learn a little more from the kids than maybe if they have to listen to one of us all the time. Another one I know a lot of schools have been doing are newsletters, sharing out different resources and ideas and things to kind of help those parents understand. And then again, like Nicole said, embedded in the student learning. This is really huge for our students. They're going to be at home. For our kids in my district, we start August the 6th, and we have several of them that are going to be distance learning. I don't want them to not get those lessons. So trying to help the teachers embed those in the student learning, because hopefully that parent's going to be sitting next to them and they're going to get that lesson too as well. And then parent nights, the days of doing open houses is probably not going to be occurring this year. Think about doing some virtual parent nights, exploring this is what, the school looks like, this is what the classroom looks like, because hopefully they'll be in there at some point. But do some virtual parent nights where you're talking about some of these same things that we've mentioned before. What does the internet look like at home versus at school? What are some resources that you can use? And then give the parents a way to connect with your district's technology department, especially if you're giving that child a district device. If something happens to that device, who can the parent contact? Where can they go to get that information? So, really reaching out to the parents a lot more than I think we have is going to help really bring home that digital citizenship, not only for our students, but also for our parents as well, as they're embarking on a new way of learning for our kids right now. So a lot of great information. Hopefully, if I need to share any of those, I know I didn't have my slide deck up. I'll definitely share my resources in the chat box for sure, Ray.
Oh, we were able to see your slides, so that's great.
Fabulous. Okay, wonderful.
It's good. You can still share it. People are going to be checking in later, downloading,
Definitely.
pieces later. So if you can put it out there, that would be awesome.
I will.
There's
sure.
a lot of great resources between you and Nicole. Just a lot of great best practices and resources, and just great information, useful information, and timely information. Right? I mean, you as Nicole was saying, everyone all of a sudden is like, I wish someone had taken the time to teach. If we only had digital citizenship, or someone had only been talking about it, that kind of makes me think, one of the questions I was thinking as you guys were both talking, the idea of, with a lot of this digital citizenship, it's almost like, in a sense, because we've kind of leapt into remote learning, I don't want to say, I hate to use the phrase, the cows are kind of out of the barn, but people have kind of really upped the remote learning and, the interactive online. We've had to. What are maybe some things that you're seeing, or maybe some strategies to kind of recover a little bit, for maybe bad practices that teachers or students maybe have already gotten into? Maybe what are you seeing, and what are some things to be aware of and ways to kind of get that back online, if there is?
I know one thing that I have seen, Nicole mentioned you find this really great resource and you don't dive into the data privacy part and things like that. Some teachers, they're kind of getting siloed in to their own classroom, and they're not sharing and asking like they normally would in a school environment. So I think just remembering, even though your class may be on a computer and you may be in a classroom all by yourself talking to them, or you may be home as a teacher, to continue to ask your school district, ask your technology department for sure, hey, I found this great resource, can I use it? Or just to keep asking for help. How can I make this interactive? How can I, make this be on a worksheet? Just don't stop asking for help. That's one that I've seen for in our district personally.
one of the things, I'm going to piggyback off of that a little bit when you were saying moving beyond the worksheet. One of the parts that I skipped over was I just forgot the name of the whole criteria, but in any case, the whole idea of really understanding intellectual property, plagiarism and so on, but also as teachers and designing tasks. And a lot of teachers ask me, so, you know, I want to give them this quiz, but how do I keep them from cheating on it? Because they can just go look up all the answers. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you dive into the slide deck, one of the things you'll see that it says is really look at, and this is hard for teachers. It is different. It's much easier to send out that discrete answer worksheet that's now digital, or that multiple choice thing. But really we want to look at either tasks that are more personalized so that students can't copy for like share their answers with each other and then all turn in the same thing because the task was so personalized. It would be obvious if they did that. And also not so Googleable, right? How can they demonstrate their knowledge in other ways? And can we give them choice? It's really, really important to support our learners to demonstrate their skills and knowledge in ways that are comfortable for them and successful for them. So while we may want them to turn everything in as typed, you know, paragraphs, for example, there are times where we're going to do that. Sometimes we do that just because we know we have to prepare them for the eventuality that a lot of them may find themselves in a situation where they're taking some kind of high stakes assessment for college or whatever that requires them to do these written responses. But that doesn't mean everything we do has to be that way. Is there room for providing students with the opportunity to submit a short video response, an audio response, a multimedia response that they created on Adobe Spark? Is there some other way for them to demonstrate their skills and knowledge? Can they have a choice? Can they propose their own path? And a lot of times when we do that, what's interesting is we'll find that because it got personalized in that way, they're going to be less likely to try to, you know, find some pre-made thing that they're just going to copy and paste and throw into a Google Doc and submit in Google Classroom. And the other piece is remembering that the design of instruction is critical. So if we want to get beyond worksheets, we also need to design instruction in a way that really is designed for learning, not necessarily just for us lecturing on video instead of lecturing in our classrooms. And if students receive instruction that is chunked, that has checks for understanding, not only does it have checks for understanding, but it gives them some kind of way of knowing if they were on the right track with their answers in the checks for understanding, so that they know if they're ready to keep going with the lesson or if they need to go back and review. And if they did struggle with the check for understanding, is there a way to tell them, hey, if you didn't get a sample, your answer wasn't like my sample answer, you might want to review this specific thing again before moving on. Because if they feel confident and comfortable that they are good at the knowledge and skills they need, then they don't have a reason to go, you know, looking for other things online to turn in and so on. And we're able to give them tasks that aren't just a digital version of a worksheet. There's a great question that just came in about over-the-shoulder completion from parents.
I was just going to bring that up. Thank you, Steve, for posting that. That's an excellent question. If you both care to address it, that would be awesome. About over-the-shoulder work completion from parents, especially from early primary grades, and thoughts anticipating inviting family collaboration with some distance assignments. If you want to go
and I will say I have been guilty of this. You know, I have a son who's going into third, so I have found myself, you know, in first and second grade, he had an assignment that we had to do at home, and it's like, okay, just give it to me and let me just show you what to do. Or his older sister would do the same. But I think, you know, if it is something that is a little more interactive, if the student's having to go and, let's say for math, instead of just giving them a worksheet and saying that you need to go and solve all these problems, you know, addition 0 through 10, get the parents involved and tell them, go and find crayons, pencils, you know, whatever that you can find, and give, you know, you create the questions and then record the students solving the questions. So get the parents involved, but make them a little bit like the teacher. Now you do, you know, of course you're gonna have to be a little careful for those who are in situations where it may be older sister or older brother who is having to help them complete the work because mom and dad are at work. But I think involving them in being kind of the facilitator of it is going to be a little less, it's going to be a little less of them doing the work for them than if it were just, say, an actual worksheet that they had to complete.
Yeah, what I really like about what you said, Eva, too, because it was actually one of the things I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
It might be important to encourage audio and video responses from students in a safe way. For example, one of the tools that a lot of people are really liking for the primary grades is Seesaw, because it also it has a great way for parents to stay connected without them having access to everybody else's stuff in the class. Teachers can really easily push out content to learners. Learners can really easily send their responses back in a variety of ways. They can draw, they can record, they can type, they can share a link to something they created. But what's nice about it as well is it's very language unintensive. They don't need to understand a lot of print text, either because they're English learners or because they're young and they're still developing, in order to interact with this tool. And it's not hard to help families know how to help them interact when they're really young. If we have their own voices, the families in that case, they're helping co-use the technology with their student, but the thinking is still coming from the student. Mm-hmm. So that's one tool. Another tool that can be really safe and is pretty easy to use as well as Flipgrid. Teachers create grids. They put a topic in the grid. It's a closed-in video discussion board. And that also is it's very safe and it's very easy to use. And that doesn't mean we don't want, kids typing ever, but you're right. It's hard. It can be very difficult to know if the kids did it or the parents did it. You'd like to think the parent, even if necessary, that the kids told the parents what to type, because they're looking at this and going, oh, you can't see, and going, I don't know what to push on here. I'll just push all the buttons. And so, that something like Seesaw or whatever would be helpful, I think. I just think it's easier in that sense. It's also easy, a tool like Seesaw, they can draw on it and it will record them doing that. So if the students need to be practicing their fine motor skills, a family member can hold the device over the piece of paper and pencil while the student is practicing some of those fine motor skills. They can read together, the student can practice, they can do sight words on it. And then really leverage your synchronous time that you will have with your learners to do some of those other tasks. That, for example, if you did a Google slide deck and you have boxes on it that the students are going to move in order to classify things, and you don't know if the parents did or the students did it, but there are ways where you can allow them to they can access the shared screen and they can manipulate objects on the screen during that live time so that you can come together as a class and do it.
I see there's another question in the chat from Steve about, does anybody know if those tools that Class Dojo has been rapidly pushing into their platform operate similar to Seesaw? I don't know.
I didn't realize Class Dojo had been upgrading their features, so I do not have an answer to that. If someone knows an example of what those tools, Steve, if you know an example of what any of those tools are, I or Eva can probably tell you if it's similar to what Seesaw has available.
I'm sorry, was that an invitation to speak?
By all means, let's go.
Sure.
It's a discussion.
All right. Yeah, so basically what happened in the middle of March is that Class Dojo always had this portfolio angle to their platform, right? And most of it is about either point management or is about communication. We kind of use it as our catch-all for things like that. But in the middle of March, when everybody started to go remote, they were like, if you need an option, especially for early elementary, we're sort of building out our portfolio section to be more of a learning management system style platform, wherein a lot of times it'll start with a prompt and then you can respond with either a video or a picture, or a lot of these elements that I think are comparable to what I'm hearing about Seesaw. We haven't really used Seesaw, but for me, the idea is the less tools that we can use to accomplish the same ends are basically what we're going to lean into. So if we continue to build out our involvement in Class Dojo, then it would only make sense for us to think about whether or not that platform is doing the same thing as Seesaw, rather than trying to use other people are recommending.
I would totally agree with that. Like, if I haven't seen the tool or how it works or what its interface looks like or, how seamless it is, but if it's, there's no need. One of the other things we got feedback from our families, you know, when we all pivoted, the pivot was super fast and hard, right? Like it was, and people were scrambling on all ends. The parents were scrambling, the teachers were scrambling, I was scrambling in my role. And one of the things that happened is, although we tried to tell teachers and everybody, like, try to keep it down to a core set of technologies, but then, you know, all the tech companies down the planet started offering, you can all try our thing for free. And then, of course, and I kept warning everybody, I said, that is not going to last. That's not a good business model. They can't keep offering it all for free. It's going to get taken away from you when this, you know, in a couple months. But we heard loud and clear from families that, especially families that had multiple children, or secondary school families who have multiple teachers, even if they only have one child, that, you know, too many platforms, too many different things, too much different technology. And so if you already have leverage with Class Dojo and it's comfortable for families and your students, and it will serve the purpose, then there's no need to go throw a new tool in the mix.
I think the last thing that I want to add to this is that it's kind of this idea. I look at sort of this approach using either Seesaw or whatever's being built out in Class Dojo as kind of like the campfire approach that seems to be more appropriate for early education, wherein you're basically putting something out into the atmosphere and you're asking families sort of collaboratively to be able to look at one another's work, and you're able to respond in a variety of mediums. And I know I'm in New York City, and Lisa Nielsen is our Senior Director of Digital Inclusiveness, Accessibility, et cetera. And she pioneers a lot of the work around this. And one of the things that she talks about is like, establish your pillars and what those pillars are conceptually, right? Like, what is it that you're doing as far as providing the easiest means of communication with families? What are you doing to provide maybe a campfire style learning management system? And then what are you doing to provide maybe more of a more traditional distance learning, like third grade and up system? And then find what those are that work for you, and make sure that you do what you can to kind of like prune the fat from anything else, so that, like you're saying, you don't get caught up in kind of like the shiny allure of the COVID subscriptions. And that's basically, I think that's just kind of the last, for me, it's like, what can you do to create a one sheet that has just sort of like a series of select pillars that say you should be addressing these things when it comes to how it is that you're operating your school, distance learning, and what you're doing to being able to make this process as seamless as possible for your families. And on that note, I'm going to mute and silence and obscure everything and leave it to you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Sure.
So much. And that's interesting, because that's kind of where, you know, we're kind of running down on time here. I know we're a little over, we started a couple minutes late here. I literally just kind of wanted to wrap up. Like, I know how much there's so much coming at everybody right now. And this is obviously a core component. So kind of piggybacking what Steve was saying, you know, is there maybe one, I know there's so much, but maybe is there one, if you were going to tell a school district or a teacher to focus on one aspect possibly of digital citizenship to focus on, right, to get your students through right now, what would it be? What would you, each of you, suggest? I know it's a big question, but.
I think for me, only because I'm experiencing it with both my 10th grader and my 3rd grader, is going to be the area of balance. Just understanding that, you know, you don't have to be in front of that device 24/7. You've got to have a balance. And unfortunately, I know for them, they're going to start off in a distance environment for the first 9 weeks. And so making sure they have a balance of school to school, and then when we're done, let's do things that don't involve a screen. So that'd be for me, the balance.
And I actually don't disagree with that at all. But if I wanted to throw another one out there, I would say that relationships and communication piece, no learning is happening if there's no community, and community can't happen if there are issues with that relationship and communication piece. And so, and you take those two things together, and I think we'll have students who come out on the other side of this a lot healthier and ready to go back to whatever our next version of, you know, hybrid, to hopefully one day back to something resembling traditional again. A really important piece to remember is, at one point, kids are going to come back onto our school campuses, maybe only for 2 days a week and then 3 days of asynchronous learning or something like that. When that day happens, it will be the first time they've actually seen their classmates face to face, except for those who have, who are friends, like already friends with some of them, right? So we need the balance so that they're healthy in those relationships. And we also need those relationships and communication. We need to foster that with every aspect of what we do in our online classes, so that when they're eager to meet each other face to face again, and they feel like a community in person because they were already a community offline, or online rather.
That's great. Thank you so much. This is a great discussion. I hate to wrap up quick, but I know we have the next session coming up soon. What a great session. I know, thank you very much, Eva and Nicole. Thank you for sharing. Steve also, thank you for jumping in here. I know Marie has just a little housekeeping here at the end. Otherwise, thank you everybody for being here today, and enjoy the rest of the conference.